Ah, for
Hello, listener, and welcome to episode 2 of Betrayed by Dice, the tabletop wargaming podcast that refuses to ever concede. My name's Lee Burns. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Daryl T. Stoker. Daryl, how are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks. Yeah, not too bad at all. Fairly relaxed day to day. Been to university, did a presentation on immune thrombocytopenia purpura, if you ever want to look it up. But other than that, yeah, nice and chilled. How about you?
Yeah, good. I didn't understand what you just said, but that's fine. Yeah, fine. Although, yeah, I'm just back from holiday, so like a few days ago, it was 27 degrees. I was in Barcelona.
Living the life.
Going to swim in the Mediterranean, and now it's black dark and miserable in Newcastle. But yeah, all right. I've had some shepherd's pie for my dinner,
Amazing.
And now I'm recording this podcast with you. So things are really starting to look up.
Life's never been better.
Yep. So look, we're back again for the difficult second podcast, the sophomore effort. It's taken a bit longer to get our diaries together for this, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
But here we are, and some sequels are actually better than the original. So I'm thinking of The Godfather, Terminator, second edition, 40k, arguably.
I agree. Yeah.
Do you think the critics will be discussing episode 2 of Betrayed by Dice in those sort of terms 10 years from now?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it will be return to form, but 10 times over.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, let's give it everything, eh? Yeah. So last time out, you were prepping hard for the Conquest Last Argument of Kings tournament at the LGT, the London Grand Tournament. So how did that go, Daryl?
Yeah, it went pretty well. Managed to win the tournament, which was a surprise. It was very shocking, but also I was very happy about, elated, if anything. Yeah, fantastic experience. Really, really good time with lots of good people, and travelled down with some friends as well, which was good. So in general, yeah, fantastic experience. Not just because I won, but also because, I know I'm hiding behind this.
I've noticed you just accidentally left, for those viewing, you accidentally left a couple of trophies on the table there.
I did,
just in case anyone didn't realise that you're now officially the best Conquest player in the country.
Well, yeah, the best person that turned up at the event, yeah. But no, yeah, I think it was. I certainly played against some really good individuals, and I took a really mean list, which has since actually been toned down a bit by the producers of the game. So, not because of me, it was already in the works. But I kind of did set out with a goal to do well. I wanted to go 3-2, 3 wins, 2 losses. So at least I achieved that and a bit more. So that was good.
Yeah, fantastic. So this episode, we're focusing in on Conquest. So we'll hear more about that anon. But yeah, a bit of housekeeping first. So if you're listening to this and you'd like to watch us, then you can at Daryl's YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Northern Realms. If you're watching it there already, but you would rather not see our faces, which I think, is a fair shout.
Yeah.
Then you can search for Betrayed by Dice on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. We've got a shiny new Instagram account where we'll be posting some stuff from the shows and anything else that we're up to. So that's instagram.com/betrayedbydice.
That's us.
And you can email us, betrayedbydice@gmail.com. There we go. So today's show, we're bringing back hobby progress and plans.
Oh, yeah.
Fans' favourite.
Yep.
That's got to be in. And then we'll be going through recent games, including that all-important LGT debrief. The main topic following on from that is Conquest Last Argument of Kings. So a bit of an overview of the game, why we think it's great.
Yep.
We've both got different perspectives on it.
Very, very much,
But I think we both think it's pretty cool.
I think it's pretty damn cool, yeah.
And then last, an exciting new segment, secondary objectives. I say new, we just forgot to record it
Yeah.
in the first episode.
Yeah, there is that.
So it's new to the listeners, and we're calling it secondary objectives. So it's where we're going to pick out something that's maybe not directly tabletop related or a bit tabletop adjacent, that we've been thinking about or noticed recently, and we'll have a bit of a chat about that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, fantastic. So, hobby progress and plans. Who wants to go first?
You go first, because I'm probably going to be talking quite a lot about Conquest. So,
all right. Hobby progress. So, since the last month and a half, I've been doing bits and bobs, a few different interesting things. One thing was decanting some paints in dropper bottles, which doesn't sound that exciting, but so this was a bunch of I was given sort of given somebody's childhood Warhammer collection
amazing
a while ago, which involved and included all sorts of bits and bobs. So there's like a metal snotling pump wagon in there.
Amazing.
Going to be put together at some point. Some really cool vampire count stuff. Well, or undead, because it's before the vampire count Tomb King split. Like one of Jez Goodwin's first Skaven, I think. And a whole bunch of old paints, which were, because Games Workshop used to make paint bottles which actually closed.
Good quality paints, yeah.
Still liquid. So some goblin green, some bleached bones, some worm purple, some woodland green, all sorts of evocative and classic paints went into some dropper bottles, and I've actually seen some use. So like these are from like 1993.
The palette of our childhood.
Sometime around then.
Yeah.
And still kind of usable. Like, I don't know whether it's time or just the paint, but like, yeah, they're not great for coverage,
right?
But really good for like, highlighting and stuff like that. So Bleach Bone's been getting a bit of work.
Has it? Nice.
So has Vomit Brown. I mean,
Vomit Brown was a classic.
Not to paint actually, vomit with, but like other things. But yeah, that was a load of fun. So like, shout out to Liam who gave us a load of dropper bottles.
Nice one, Liam.
I've never decanted paints like that. They needed done because the bottles were perishing faster than the paint. But yeah, they're going to get a lot of use.
Did you have to do any revivifying of the paint at all? Any medium added or? Almost
none.
Yeah.
I put up like a couple of drops from a pipette of water into a couple of them.
Right. Okay.
Assuming that would be basically the only thing that was sort of like lacking from the last however many years. But yeah, they were basically all just good to go.
Fantastic. Which lid era were there? Was it the white flip-up ones?
It was a mix of it was the white round flip-up ones, and the issue that the lids were falling apart basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, they needed to go into something which is going to sort of like preserve them. But it's cool though, because it's sort of like, it feels like you're painting with a museum piece almost.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm looking at your paints.
Yeah, P3 paints have got the same lid. You can see them over there. The two. Yeah. And what was that? I can't remember the name of the brand of the paint that used to make them, but it sounds. I think it's French. Cote d'Arms.
So Cote d'Arms made or still make like something which is. But I think there's a few that are jumping on now. There's a few companies which are doing, because everybody wants what's the closest to Goblin Green.
Yeah.
So there's a few companies that are sort of doing stuff like that.
Dunk's done the GW colour range but better paints in his two thin coats selection as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So that was not painting, but painting related. Other than that, I have painted up largely the Wrath of Angels Aeronautica starter box.
Looked awesome as well.
So yeah, Marines and Eldar. I've basically just been going with the colours from the box. So like red for the Eldar and some green for the Marines in there. Just using oil washers all over, and then quite a lot of dry brushing. Kind of in the sort of artist opus way, but like just doing it with, cheap ass makeup brushes. But, keeping it a little bit moist.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid the dusty thing.
The powdery, yeah.
And I find that works, pretty good. Part of that was using my first go of like a Pro Acryl Green, which didn't have the best coverage. So that took like a few coats. So like Pro Acryl's, I don't know, a bit of a sort of like hipster choice, or some pretty.
I'm a firm proponent of Pro Acryl. Yeah.
Everyone knows the white, right? Because like the white is the white is the gateway drug into pro acrylic paints because it actually is amazing. So I'm like buying the odd one of those every now and then, and the green was fine eventually.
Which green was it? Is it the one that's called green? Yeah,
which I appreciate.
And a strange question, but did you do much in the way of shaking for it?
I shook it massively.
A lot, right?
For a long time.
So I had a similar experience at first with mahogany, and I thought, this is terrible. It was one of the first ones that I bought as well. I was like, I can't believe how bad the coverage is, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out I was basically painting with medium. And it took a lot of time on the Vortex mixer. I don't know if they'd just been sat for a really long time or whatever, but it took a lot of time on the Vortex mixer to get all of the pigment off the bottom. But once it was done, it was a much better paint to paint with.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I'll have a look. So I'm vortexless, so I'm shaken manually. So I'll need to. I'll have a look at that. But yeah, that set's coming on, and I'll talk about that in games played because it's a great game. Cool minis. Elsewhere, I was a bit inspired by you talking about painting for commission last time out. I had Lieutenant Calcius from a sort of job lot of marine stuff that I got. So I thought, right, I'm going to paint this guy up and stick him on eBay and see how that goes. So I painted it like to a nice standard as fast as I could as an ultramarine.
Yeah.
Thinking, people will maybe want to buy that. Edge highlighting, put some dusty, pigments on the legs, trying to like just do things which made it look kind of cool quickly. And so that sold for £20 on eBay, which is exactly how much it would have sold for if I hadn't painted it at all. So I had a fun time painting it.
Yeah. And it's a bit of an experience as well, isn't it? Excuse me. It's a bit of an experience as well, trying to do that whole sort of painting to try and earn from it process. But the problem with secondhand miniatures, I think, a lot of the time is that people essentially devalue a lot of them and use the excuse, oh, well, it's painted, so I'm going to have to strip/repaint. And I use that myself quite a lot as well. However, increasingly, we're seeing a lot of people who just want painted miniatures to play the game. The painting isn't their side of the hobby. So I feel like there will definitely be space for that, and it'll grow as 40k grows exponentially, as it always does.
Do you think people want painted miniatures or a painted army? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and maybe it's because Ultramarines aren't the vogue at the moment, or I think if it was an Iron Hands one, it might have been a bit easier to sell.
Maybe. I mean, I wasn't my feelings weren't too hurt. I did it like just purely as a little experiment because I have like quite a few lieutenants, so I didn't need this guy. But I mean, I guess I have the experience of painting that miniature, and whoever bought it has got a miniature that is painted to an okay standard, so fine. Elsewhere, in sort of very much non-GW news, I needed some thugs for my Frostgrave warband that I'm looking to start. So for the sort of characters, I'm probably going to use old Warhammer Fantasy stuff because I've got plenty of wizards.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have anything that was just some sort of standard guys or girls, as it turns out, because I bought some of the North Star miniatures, thugs, and they're all women. And it was fun to start painting those because they're not, the most detailed minis ever, but they are quite characterful.
Yeah.
So they just go over nice and quick. So just, contrast paints, a little bit of touching up. But yeah, just really nice actually to build some minis where, it doesn't have to go together a particular way. You can sort of do a bit of posing.
Yeah.
Quite sort of a bit of a blast from the past really, but really enjoyable.
So that came up quite a lot of times in conversation recently with folk who are maybe a bit newer in the hobby complaining about building models from other systems because they're just so, in inverted commas, spoilt by GW, easy to build, everything, it just fits together almost sort of, automatically, and there's no thinking in it. It's just, this is how they go together. And they haven't had had that. I'm sure you'll remember the white metal Terminators, trying to get those to glue together with super glue when you didn't know accelerator was the thing, and you spent more time peeling the pieces off your hands than you did from but so I quite enjoy having that bit of freedom where you can slightly change an arm's position to just make it a bit different to the guy that's next to him, or have two squads that look different. One of the things that I really dislike about the GW range of 40k stuff, especially that I've played with, is like all of my Genestealer cult stuff is like it's just 4 of this pose, 4 of this pose, 4 of this pose, 4.
Yeah.
And it's the same with it. It is. I mean, it does happen in other games, but maybe I just got a chip on my shoulder about GW. Who knows?
You think?
Yeah, maybe, but yeah, I think it's because 40k used to be very fluid in the way that it was just it used to be a torso, some arms, a head, and you could change dips, and you could make them quite dynamic. Granted, just inhaled a load of saliva. I'll edit that bit out. Granted, there was a lot of badly built models that look horrendous, and often you find them in job lots, and they're all doing a bit of this, and it looks like they're doing the can or something. But yeah. But no, it is. I love a bit of freedom in building, and great to see some female representation in miniatures.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't figured out what the kind of background is for this. I mean, you say all the wizards that I've got are blokes, so the guys are still in charge. But I don't know. I'll figure out some sort of story. Maybe somebody's going to come up through the ranks or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been grand. And I guess like plans, something I want to get into is the Gallowfall terrain. So this is from Kill Team. It was a terrain expansion from the last box of season 2 of Kill Team, and it's effectively people are jumping off trying to get off the Gallowfall, and so there's lots of little drop pods, and there's some just great missions to go with that. So yeah, I've had that box for a little while, haven't cracked it open, so want to get into that at some point.
Brilliant.
I think a bit of dry brushing, and it should go over pretty quick.
Yeah.
And to play some of those missions will be fantastic.
Yeah, we're big fans of Kill Team Map Betrayed by Dice, aren't we?
Yeah, defo. So yeah, that's it for me. Daryl, what you been up to?
Well, obviously, I did a lot of painting for the LGT. Painted just about a full Dweg Home army. I ended up going with one model unpainted, which was a model that I had forgot to build until the night before, which was frustrating. But I had done went from 0 to had about 7 or 8 regiments, all with 12 folk in each, plus a monster, and some brutish sort of ogre-sized sort of things, monster-sized things. So yeah, ton of work. I'll put pictures up for people to see.
Amazing. I mean, this isn't your first rodeo for like painting an absolute ton of minis just before a tournament, because at least insofar as I'm aware, the same or similar thing happened before
the Genestealer cults. Yeah,
so you painted up a Genestealer cult army in like 5 minutes,
4 days. Yeah, well, 4 evenings.
So how do you do that then?
Well, usually paint them pretty badly, but no. So just loads of speed painting techniques. So pick a fairly simple color scheme. 2 or 3 main colors plus some sort of visual interest, and oil washes just make everything look amazing.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and you say a simple color scheme, but like as far as I didn't see the Dwegs when I finished, but your Genestealer cult army when finished, it was it was sort of harmonious across the board because all the miniatures were tied into that scheme.
And actually at an army level, so like nobody ever would pick up one of my miniatures and be like, "Wow, this is a competition painted piece." But when you stood at the end of a table looking at an army on the table that looks like that, and as long as it's cohesive, with some bits of visual interest. So Dweg Home have a lot of flames, based flames in their theme. So there was a few sort of flamey bits on the models, and I went for like a primarily dark steel and dark brass color scheme. But then their sort of hold, which is their clan, their faction. Color was like a turquoisey teal,
nice,
like a jade green.
Something that's going to pop out a bit.
Exactly. So it's just enough to give a bit of a where did that come from? So yeah, and then Ab Tai Lung have got a beautiful oil called Smoke, which is like this grey with just the slightest little bit of brown in it. So it's like a really dark, like smoky, sooty grey with a tiny little bit of brown in it, and it just gives that heavy industry, greasy, like sooty, as if they've been working in forges kind of look to everything, and it works.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that's sort of.
And so that was like an all over, slap it over everything kind of wash?
Yeah. So like everything was completely covered, and then the reductive painting method, the method that we've talked about before, just leaving it in the recesses, leaving it in the interesting places, and having some shiny bits sticking through.
Brilliant.
But yeah. So did that. So that was fun. You can see them on my desk at the minute. I've been building and sorting out some Carnival miniatures for tomorrow. So we've got some of the lads from the club are going to be playing some Carnival. I'm going to teach them. It's a really fun. I don't know if you've ever seen it before. Have you seen it before?
I've seen bits and bobs. So,
yeah, so
the club, this is West Allotment
Wildlands, yeah.
The best wargaming club there is.
True. Yep. Yeah, I don't think anybody would dispute that. So yeah, Wildlands. So I've been building a load of MDF terrain and some miniatures to teach some guys that tomorrow. It's like this really cool Renaissance weird science skirmish game set in Venice. And it's got like Assassin's Creed themes. So you've got guys jumping from, rooftop to rooftop and doing athletics checks to do things, and like sort of vaulting over little pools in the canals and things like that. But then there's a bit of an eldritch H.P. Lovecraft theme, because there's the cult of Dagon, the Rashar, who are like fish folk that can swim around in the canals, jump out, pull people down, drown them. And then they've pulled some other cool things. They've got a bit of Vatican influence, obviously, with it being set in Italy. They've got cool rich nobles who like to don masquerade masks and go out and murder people in the evenings and things like that. So just really, really cool factions, and a very inexpensive game. You need quite a lot of terrain, which you can sort of scratch build yourself out of plastic card or foam core and save a lot of money, or TT Combat does some pretty affordable bundles. But the gangs are, I think they're 20 quid. It's 20 quid for a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some D8s or D10s. Yeah. So it's a very, and all the rules are free and stuff online. So
amazing. So how, and I'm saying this because some games sort of seem to struggle with this a bit. How's the rules for like jumping and stuff?
Yeah, good. So you've just got like a jump distance, and you have to roll essentially like I think it's called an acrobatics or an athletics check. And you roll dice equal to whatever your stat is. And in the game, there's something called aces, which are just successes. And it's a 7, 8, 9, or 10. And if you buy their proprietary dice, they're coloured in red as well, so it's cool. And then you also have a fate dice, which is a dice that always gets added into the pool. So if something happens on that, something cool happens.
Okay.
But if you fail, if you fumble, then you can plummet from the floor. But it's got a really nice mechanic in it, actually, where and it's definitely a friendly game. I wouldn't call it a tournament style game, but it's got a mechanic where if your opponent does something cool, you can grant them a will point back, which is a resource that they can spend. Because like I played against Chris Porter, who's one of our friends from the club, and he managed to get this guy who was quite heavily clad in armor to jump along the foundations that were holding up a building that's suspended over a canal. He managed to get him to sort of like jump along each of the individual pieces by successfully passing all these rules and getting into my back lines. And I was like, that was really cool. That absolutely deserves
have
a will point. Yeah, murderers, but have a will point. Yeah. So that was a really
that
cool.
is cool. I mean, because we should all be encouraging each other to do cool things in games anyway. But like for that to actually to be built into the game, that's nifty.
Yeah, really good. And he spent the rest of the game suplexing all of my characters into the water and watching them drown. Yeah.
Okay,
that was good. Yeah, so got that for tomorrow. to get sorted out. Some of that's already painted. It was my first ever attempt at slap chop, so I can put some pictures of that on, but it sort of went quite well for what slap chop is.
Did you go just blacks up to whites, or did you sort of go with any sort of like
blacks up to white?
Yep.
So I have done previously my Wadroon for Conquest. I did sand colours, browns and sands, and I found it a lot better actually. It looks a lot warmer and more realistic. But these guys were just straight from the the YouTube video, blacks up to whites, and then just GW contrast over the top.
I do think I want to like all the slap chop that I've done before has been black, grey, up to white, and I think like trying some different colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna just like it gives it probably a bit more life to things. Like monochrome is cool; it's a look. Yeah. But like I was watching some video where somebody was like going from a very dark purple up to like light pinks and using that as the sort of and just
absolutely, in all complementary colors. So I did that with the Wadroon. I started with, instead of a pitch black, I started with a dark grey, like a raven grey.
Okay.
And then like the the Zandri Dust and what's it? Zandri Dust, Screaming Skull, and the one that's between it. I can't remember now. Ushabti Bone. Yeah. Screaming Skull, Ushabti Bone. All of those. So did that as the sort of colours going up, and finished on Screaming Skull, so it wasn't pure white.
Yeah.
And that sort of pulling in of the extremes. And I know people paint that sort of style for contrast, but I think sometimes it makes it too poppy.
Okay, yeah.
And pulling in those two ends, so having a lighter starting point and a darker ending point, just gives it a bit more of a natural look.
Yeah,
and in the Wadroon, who are all skin and furs and leathers and feathers and things like that, it feels a bit more real.
Yeah, that's cool. And people are still figuring out, because if you put slap chop in your video name, you get a lot of hits.
Exactly.
So people are still figuring out like different and interesting ways to sort of like.
So do we need to put hashtag slap chop in there?
We'll do an episode about slap chop at some point.
Yeah.
What else, man?
Lots of 3D printing. Tons and tons of 3D printing. I've been really enjoying that. And I've got another commission to do. Chris, the aforementioned Chris, I'm going to do some 100 Kingdoms bits for him. And there's a lovely gentleman who's fairly recently joined the club called Rich, who's a BattleTech player, and BattleTech is something that I'm gonna try and get rid of, explore in another episode, because I think it's definitely worth exploring. Fantastic game.
I'm up for talking about that because I am a big
curious.
stompy robot. Well, no, I'm sort of like I'm not sold on big robots wandering around, so I'm open to be persuaded. So you'll have to persuade me.
As a system, it's just so good. But so he's got these and I'll put some pictures of these up. But he wants me to repaint those for him. And these miniatures are probably from mid 90s, so really really cool. And
metal.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. And our good friend Alex, unfortunately, moved away today. He's moved down to Canterbury. So I still need to get his Moonstone bits finished. And
so this is his leaving gift, is it?
No, this is just something that I've been painting from for a while, but then obviously found more interesting things to paint in the meantime.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. A real smorgasbord of different painting and modelling stuff going on. So you're gonna keep talking for a bit here now, because we're going to swing in straight into recent games.
Okay.
And where else to start but at the London Grand Tournament. So I'm interested in a couple of different things about this. So you won.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm still very happy about it. Shocked. Yeah, I was very shocked, but
yeah, I guess I'm interested in sort of like the experience of a tournament, how the opponents were, how it was organized, all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
I think what I'll preface it all with is, if you are interested in breakdowns of games and things like that, and really sort of the nitty gritty and meta of Conquest, there's definitely just recently sort of guested on a podcast called Just Roll Ones, who have got a breakdown of the individual games on that podcast. So if you want to hear more about the actual games, feel free to go and listen to those guys. Good Conquest-based podcast. But as far as LGT in general and as an event, it was great. I'll make sure I put a picture up here on day one. So we went down on Friday night actually, but on the first day of the event, I took a picture with me, Alex, and Rob, who were the two lads from our club that I went down with.
Yep.
And there's probably about 1,500 people in this this big sports centre, all playing different systems. You know, there's 40k AOS.
What was the venue this year?
It's called Lee. It's the same one for the last 3 years. Lee Valley Athletics Centre in Edmonton, so just not too far from Essex, London. It's about normally about a 4.5-5 hour drive, but ended up as 7 hours this time, or just under 7 hours because of some roadworks and things like that, which was a bit sad, but it was fine. And when you're in a car with your pals and you're just having a bit of banter and everyone's excited, it's fine anyways. But yeah, Friday night got there. I've been to the last two, but for different game systems. Song of Ice and Fire helped run those two GTs. So there wasn't a Friday night Conquest event. So we just went and hung out with the guys from Song of Ice and Fire. There was a couple of events running, but lots of people there just chatting and things. So these events are very socially orientated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people there that are just there to play games and stuff like that, but I would say the vast majority are actually there just to have a good time and have a bit of a party and, you know, meet friends and things like that. So yeah, we all ended up sat down. I mean, Alex and Rob never met these people before, but sat around a table having a bit of banter, and then someone came over and went, Daryl, you come back to the campsite. There's a large campsite right next to the stadium where you can stay. So we ended up back at the campsite around a campfire, sharing bottles of tequila and this, that, and the other. It's great Friday night.
So that's how to prepare.
Yeah.
For an assault on the LGT. Is swigging tequila.
Yeah. Not a great deal of it, but you know.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
Yeah. So that was really good. It was really nice to see all the lads from Song again. But then Saturday, the event itself was run by Yanis, who is community lead, an event coordinator for Parabellum, but also he was joined by Stavro, who's the creative lead for Parabellum and essentially the head honcho of the company. So it was pretty scary playing games with him walking around, to say the least. But yeah, it was ran on their new tournament app, so they did pairings and stand-ins all through that. You know, tournament pack was provided a little while before the event, so we knew which game modes we were going to play, so we knew what we needed to bring with us and the rules and things like that. They had provided, so that the tournament itself provides mats, so there was neoprene mats for every game, and the organisers had provided terrain. We used mainly 2D terrain in Conquest, so you know, the terrain was already put on the tables and things like that. So really, it was just turn up with your army and your dice, and get ready to play. So played 5 games over the weekend. All of my opponents were absolutely fantastic. Really nice folk. Everyone was dead friendly and dead chatty, and you know, even after your game, it was dead easy to just, you know, wander over to someone and just start having a bit of banter. We were all there because we love Conquest, but spent quite a lot of time chatting to the Parabellum guys as well. Beers on site, so we were drinking, you know, beers between each of the matches. Having a 11 o'clock beer probably wasn't the best idea, but it set us in good stead for the afternoon. Great food. They had multiple food vans. So they had like a souvlaki van and like artisan pizzas and fancy chips and curries and all sorts of stuff that you could get there, like food festival style as well.
Yeah.
So facilities wise, it was great. You know, everyone was really friendly. So yeah, just a fantastic event.
So you won.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, the aforementioned and friend of the podcast, Alex also did well.
Yeah, so he came 4th in the tournament.
Yeah,
and also won Best Painted.
Yeah,
which was phenomenal.
It's amazing. So
his army looks great, and he fully deserved it.
Yeah.
Annoyingly for Rob, I think Rob, who was the other gentleman that came down, and actually, considering how new he is to hobby, a phenomenal painter.
Yeah,
like a scarily
amazing,
scarily good painter. But he didn't have time to finish his army, and you could only enter the competition with fully painted armies.
Sure, yeah.
I'm pretty sure at some point Yanis said if you had finished your army, you would have won. So Alex would have came second in that. But yeah, so the Wellens lads all did, you know, well, all had really good time. Had a bit of banter on the Saturday night. I ended up psyching myself out a little bit, knowing that thinking that I was going to be playing the next person in the stand-ins. who I ended up playing in the final, but was a Wadroon player, and I had played a Wadroon player earlier on in the first day, and it was the closest game I've ever had. It finished, I think, 26-25 to me
Okay.
in the last turn. So, and I literally walked away from that game with shaky legs because I was concentrating that much, you know what I mean? So I had psyched myself out a bit. We had went to Asda afterwards, got some cans, and we're just sitting in the hotel having a drink and chatting through the day. And it's just like, right, I'm gonna have to. I'm just gonna have one beer and then I'm going to bed because I need to get ready for tomorrow. Yeah. And me and Jamie, who was the lad that I'm talking about, he a lovely gent that's written article for Goonhammer. Both of us. And the next day we're just like, I've spent all night thinking about how I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that was good. In a very friendly way, though.
Absolutely.
It wasn't like glaring at each other over the table or anything.
So it sounds like an amazing time. How many systems are on the go?
Oh, there's loads. There's absolutely loads. Just like off the top of my head, there was definitely 40k, Age of Sigmar, Horus Heresy, Adeptus Titanicus. So the GW Kill Team, the GW stuff was covered. Kill Team had its own. They opened a new part of the Athletics Centre for Kill Team, and it looked like it had about 30 or 40 tables. So they had quite a lot of entrants.
Yep.
Obviously, Conquest was there. Song of Ice and Fire was there. There was Malifaux. There was loads of Star Wars games, Legion, X-Wing, Armada. Some card games were going on up at the top. I think I seen some Kings of War going. So there was tons of stuff. If you play the system, it's probably there.
Yeah, brilliant. And heading back next year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've went for the last, so this is my third year in a row, and I think even if I wasn't dedicated to one system, I would go back to play something because I just really like the event.
That's brilliant.
It's just a really good place to go.
I mean, you've got to defend your...
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You've got to defend your trophy now, haven't you?
I certainly do.
Yeah, fantastic time. Outside of that, been playing anything else?
We played, so the Alex that we've been chatting about, as we've mentioned earlier, he's moved down to Canterbury today. For his wife just qualified as a speech and language therapist and got a job down there. So good luck, Shireen. I hope it goes really well for you. And I hope Canterbury looks after you. So yes, we had a farewell game of Conquest, which normally plays about 2,000 points aside, and you can play it in a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours. We played a 4,000 point aside 4-player game, which took us about 5 hours to finish. And we played random activations. That was very confusing. So, we'll talk about it in a bit, but Conquest has preset activations by yourself. You choose your army's activation in an Argo You Go format before the turn starts.
So you just shuffled all the
cards
our
decks, yeah. Okay. And with Wadroon, who rely on activating in order, that got quite difficult.
Instantly, like you say, some factions need to have the activation deck put in a certain way.
Yeah. So that was fun and crazy and very sort of not how Conquest is normally played, but very good. Yeah,
cool.
Really enjoyed it.
Did it work out? Was it?
Yeah. Very much
Nobody
so.
sort of ran away with it or anything? It was still going?
No, I think we finished something like 49-42 or something like that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Good. So did that. I ran a game of Lancer at the club last week, which is not last week, the week before, which is an RPG. Really, really good. Love that. Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves. And it's really cool because it's got a bit of a hybrid war game feel to it. It's played on a hex map, so it's got a bit of a BattleTech feel to it, and it's big smashy robots. So
I was playing some Underworlds opposite you.
You did, yeah.
That. So where does an RPG end and a war game start? Because it looked, to me like it could have been a game of BattleTech that was going on.
Yeah. Well, so when you've got someone narrating the thing, I suppose, and someone directing like the enemies and maybe changing how things work to drive a story more than just to win a scenario.
Sure. So how many people were
4 players? Yeah, 4 players and then a GM.
Are they sort of each man for themselves?
Yeah. Individual mech. So just like in Dungeons and Dragons, each person plays a character. Each person plays a mech in this. Each player chooses a pilot who then pilots a mech, and they are sort of one and the same.
Yep.
So that was really fun. Just did a one shot, but it's really sort of step in, step out as a system. Yeah. Every time you do a scenario, you get something called a license level, and it just modifies what sort of things you can take. But pretty much anyone can, even the base systems can still be useful in the game. So that's really good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I've got some stuff for Drowned Earth next week as well, which I think we'll talk about on another podcast because it's a really cool system.
All right.
What about you?
Well, after painting most of the starter set for Aeronautica, I had my first game of that with my pal Ben, who came to the club. And yeah, it was an intro game. We're both sort of like figuring it out. And but yeah, basically great. Just again, like a little bit of a sort of throwback in a couple of ways to like I don't know, war games of yore, because so yeah, it's small scale flyers zooming around trying to shoot each other. There's not many rerolls in it. If you die, you die. It's like, you know, like old style video games or something. It's like, oh well, I guess that ship's dead then or whatever. So yeah, but really cool, and a little bit in a similar vein to Conquest. You know, you give orders to each of your flyers, you know, at the start of a turn. So you're obviously trying to second guess what the other person's doing. You're trying to think about what you're doing. An order can sort of go one of two ways, some of them, depending on, you know, how you're going to react to what the other person's done. So yeah, just very reactive, very sort of like interactive, and just like cool to play something with not many miniatures, which is done in like, I don't know, like 3/4 of an hour or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But still, for me, like exists within, you know, the world of
the
40k
universe,
or 30k, whatever. And yeah, just like a load of fun. So yeah, definitely going to be playing some more of that.
Yeah.
Interesting that they have effectively sort of like killed it off as a 40k game. So they're still producing stuff because it's going to be rolled into Legiones
Imperialis. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, something I think is kind of interesting maybe to talk about another time again is like, you know, playing dead games where that's it. There's not going to be any more stuff. There's no meta to chase. The models that you've got and the models that there are. And I don't kind of mind that. Like, I mean, there's something about, you know, being on the hype train and seeing the new stuff, but knowing that like you can just like pick up a game effectively as a board game.
And that's it.
And that's it is also really enjoyable, I think. And like, you know, less stressful in a way or something. Just like, this is a game I'm just playing for fun. I don't have to try and get better.
Because once you've learned it, you've learned it. There's never new variables, is there?
Yeah,
we did that recently with Guild Ball, didn't we? We
had a game of
Guild Ball, and that is in by all rights a dead game now, no longer supported by the developer, but still a robust rules system that you can have fun with.
Yeah.
And as long as you've got the kit, then, you know, go for it.
This is the second time that GW's killed off a game the minute I've shown any interest in it. After, like, I got back into all of this stuff by being interested in fantasy. Boom, Old World explodes.
Yeah, by the way,
Yeah. And now again
Square
with...
bases,
Now again, I mean, that's coming back, obviously. But now again with Aeronautica. But, yeah, there's a world of, like, sort of 3D printable minis out there that I'll probably have a look at some point, because there's some Necron stuff, which is probably cool. But yeah, just a great game. Nicely written rules. Yeah, dead simple, but just dead fun. It is,
yeah. And there's actually quite a lot to it, because once you get through the initial dogfight sort of thing, when you're playing some of the missions or the campaign style missions, because they released a few. There was Rin's World, which I've got somewhere, and then there's a couple more, wasn't there? You know, you get sort of quite asymmetrical missions, which are really fun to play and much more narrative than I bring 2k, you bring 2k, and whoever wins is the one that's left at the end. But like I played a mission where I had to try and deploy troops over target zones.
Okay.
So it was very obvious where I was going with my transports.
Yeah.
But I had to try and mitigate that with some fighters, and then my opponent was just trying to shoot down my transports as quickly as possible. So there's little bits of jinking and trying to get out of the way, but you've still got 4 or 5 turns to get to that place and deploy troops, which is, I don't know if you noticed, but some ships have troop capacity as well, drop capacity.
I mean, that's really cool. Also, I mean, yeah, when we were playing it, it was kind of hilarious because we weren't well versed in what all the maneuvers are. So half the time we were like zooming past each other, not getting any shots in at all.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I can imagine that once you get to actually know what all the maneuvers are,
Mm-hmm.
then at that point it can come from being more of a casual game to like a bit more competitive.
Yeah.
But like, yeah,
It doesn't need to be competitive though, does it? And in reality, you know, if you ever sort of look at fighter pilots, and it's very easy to lose track of someone. Like, they spend a lot of time training in just maintaining line of sight to someone.
Yeah. So because like a plane goes by, you're like, oh, see ya then.
Yep. And then by the time you've reacted to that and you've turned around, they could also be, you know, up, down, somewhere else in a cloud. So there's a lot of variables to it. So yeah, but I think it's a great little system. Cool. I've got some stuff down there for it, actually. So yeah, I think it's a really fun, interesting little system. The models are great.
The models are cool.
I love anything sort of plane based. So yeah, I'm all about that.
Very cool. And then just I'm bringing all the GW stuff this week. So we had a bit of an Underworlds night at the club. So that was myself, Liam, and Carl. And yeah, had a 2-player game first of all. Warhammer Underworlds. This is, so for anyone that doesn't know, it's a sort of Age of Sigmar universe, hex based beat 'em up basically. Where there's a sort of like there's a card deck building element to it, but you can also just bring the cards that your sort of faction came with.
Is that adversary mode? That's adversary mode, right? Is it? That's where you bring just a base deck, and it takes out that element of I've got this super tuned deck and you haven't.
There's a rivals deck.
Which
is just like a sort of fixed deck.
Yeah.
And then there's like a whole world of cards which people collect at different times, and so like I think how they run it competitively is that any cards that were from 2 or more editions ago are verboten, and you have to just use. But I mean, I'm about 2 editions out of date. I mean, I was paying some attention to it, and then as with all the GW stuff, so much stuff came out. So we were all, I think, just playing with the cards, not the rivals decks, just the cards that came with our factions. And it was just loads of fun. So I had a 2-player game against Carl, where I was using some Nighthaunt, and then we had a sort of 3-player game. I've played it multiplayer before.
All right.
And it works fine. All the rules are written that just the next, it's written in the wording of just the next player, or, so it scales perfectly to 3 or 4 players. You just use an additional board each. And, one time it goes round clockwise, the other time it goes round anti-clockwise in terms of whose next turn it is. But again, it's a game that isn't so, I mean, it can be played as a very tight competitive game. And I think it really succeeds in that it's written like it can be done like that.
Yeah.
But if you just want to like roll some dice and see if like you manage to inflict some wounds on this other fella that you don't like the look of it stood next to you, it works totally fine as well.
Yeah.
And it's just great, really, really good. And we've been wanting to play it at the club for a little while, and I think we'll do again because it's easy to do. You can have a few games, lots of fun.
I got quite into Underworlds during the Beastgrave releases. I got quite into Underworlds in the Beastgrave release sort of period, and did start down that competitive rabbit hole of I need to get all the decks. I need to, do all this. But actually, probably the most fun that I've had is just playing the starter set with the 2 decks that come in it. I think that was the Beastgrave one, which is the Wood Elves versus the Beastmen starter set. And actually, it just played so well. I played a bit with Craig. He had the who's in it? It's some Stormcast with crossbows, and is it Nighthaunt?
I think that might have been one of the actual starter sets, because they do starter sets, and then they do sort of themed boxes, which are effectively starter sets as well. But
so I think Beastgrave was one of the starter sets as well. But really fun game, isn't it? It is a really fun game, and it's actually quite. All of the factions feel quite unique and diverse and play differently, and
great minis as well. Because they don't have to, because there's they don't have to like stand next to each other.
No.
So you've got, I guess, if you're designing the minis for that, you've got more you can make more use of negative space.
Yeah.
You got more. You can just people can be in more sort of dynamic poses.
Definitely.
Really cool.
It's quite nice that they've added them into Age of Sigmar as units that you can take as well. So they're sort of, to use Parabellum's term, one collection, 2 games sort of thing.
And 3 games because Warcry. So you can hoist some of them into Warcry as well, which is another. I've never played Warcry, but
I played a bit of it. It's good.
Seems good. So that's all the GW stuff I've been playing, and some GW stuff that I'm gonna be playing. So in a few weeks, I'm heading down to Warhammer World.
Nice.
And so I was gonna look to play some 40k as you do, but there's a big old tournament on. I think they're having a narrative Horus Heresy event. So I'll be super interested to see what that looks like. Some pretty well painted and cool armies, I'm guessing. But the couple of spare tables that they did have were for kill teams. So we're going to be playing some 3-player kill team.
Perfect.
On some of the very cool looking Sector Mechanicus-ish boards that they've got there.
Yeah.
Been to Warhammer World once before, didn't play any games, was just like in the exhibition and looking around and stuff. So absolutely looking forward to that.
That'd be brilliant, yeah. That'd be brilliant.
Okay. Games played, done. So onwards to our main topic, Daryl, and we are talking about Conquest.
Yeah.
So we've said what we want to do is a bit of a sort of deep dive into it. Why we think it's a cool game. We've talked about from 2 different perspectives. So you are the best player in the UK. I've played a bit and like the minis and have an army. I've played like 8 games or something.
Yeah.
I beat you once.
You did?
So at that point, I was the best player. It doesn't work like that, does it? So there's a bit of a meme whereby, you tend to lose your intro games, don't you?
Well, not intentionally.
Yeah.
I might not build myself the best lists.
Yeah.
But I still try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a cool game. There's lots to talk about. So where should we go first? Should we talk through some of the factions that
let's do that. Let's start with that because it as a Conquest, for anybody that hasn't picked it up yet, is a rank and flank fantasy miniatures game set in a world called Air. It's a 38mm scale.
Bit bigger than normal.
Yeah, big chunky models. And it has some of your normal fantasy tropes, but with a little bit of zest. It feels like a well-seasoned fantasy game. So to start off with, the first factions that got released were the 100 Kingdoms.
Who are they?
So the 100 Kingdoms are a feudal 100 Years War style knightly, Knights of the Realm, men at arms, peasant longbowmen sort of faction with cool, like almost fanatic religious crusader-y style sects. So they've got different orders. For instance, the Ashen Dawn, who are these, I'm only mentioning them so I can put a picture up, because these just enormous, like I think they're about the size of a dreadnought each, so like a 40k dreadnought, each mounted man is about the size of a dreadnought in 40k, so they're enormous.
Units of really cool cavalry, but
yeah, they do a lot. Yeah, no, not each unit, each single model is the size of a dreadnought. So you essentially end up with 3 or 6 dreadnoughts lined up in a line, which is really cool. So they've got lots of different types of cavalry, lots of infantry, and then officers and pikemen and halberdiers and all that kind of cool stuff. Very normal person in a very not normal world.
Yeah, they are they repping us?
Yes. Yeah. They are the bog standard
lad.
Humans. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're the Daves.
Okay. The Nords?
The Nords. So the Nords are a race of sort of humans 1.2. So they're enormous in comparison, much bigger muscle bulk, taller, meaner, Viking, adjacent people that live in the frozen wastes of the north.
Giants.
Joined by Jotnar, which are giants, if you've never seen that term used before, trolls, wargs, werewolves, kind of lots of this Nordic, Viking sort of inspired thing. Lots of really cool animal skins and skulls and blokes with big axes, Valkyries, and there's quite a lot of it's really nice actually. There's a big mix of male and female models in it. The Bow Chosen, which are one of the best units in the game, aesthetically, have a really cool mix of folk in it, and they do special edition characters. So there's a new special edition character coming out, which is a Jarl, and it's a female Jarl.
Cool.
Who's really, really cool. Who we've got next? Dweghome. So the Dweghome are who I took to the LGT.
Yep.
Very.
I was going to say, it says here on this thing that we're going to describe these in a sentence.
Oh.
I mean, it's testament to your enthusiasm.
Sorry,
for the game.
I'll try. Okay, I'll try. So Dweghome, angry short blokes with beards.
Yeah.
That like metal and killing dragons.
Metal, the substance.
Both.
Yeah.
Hey, metal? No.
Yeah.
So lots of metal, lots of armor, and they're really good at magic as well. Fire magic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Magic dwarfs.
Yeah.
As opposed to some dwarfs aren't into magic, are they?
Well,
But, yeah.
I mean, because they had the rune chants.
Runes,
didn't they? Which is essentially magic, but with a different word, because it's like what's it? Conan in Age of Sigmar. We don't have magic, but we do have prayers, which do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Because
something needs to happen in that phase.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, you're getting shortchanged, aren't you?
Cool.
Spires. This one's going to take more than a sentence, Lee, so I apologize in advance.
That's fine.
But this is definitely the equivalent of elves. These are the long-living, long-scheming, diplomatic, and can actually be quite insidious, working their sort of political tendrils into everything race. In the lore, they've actually came from a different planet.
So there's been some sort of cataclysm, hasn't there, which is described to an extent. But
exactly.
We don't know exactly what happened.
They were fleeing something, but we're not entirely sure what it is yet. And then the path home gets closed.
By one of them.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. Intrigue,
exactly. I don't know if you ever saw a cartoon called The Dino Riders, but that is almost exactly how that starts as well.
Okay.
It's just clicked in my head, but that's exactly how it starts. But yeah, these guys are awesome. And aesthetically, they've got a very insectile, body horror, sort of weird vibe to them, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's a mix of sort of recombined things that make up a humanoid, but with very little in the way of brain or higher function, and they're just driven by pheromones, which are the drones.
So playing the Spire, the thing that sort of attracted me to them is like kind of as a painting project. There was nothing really that I'd painted before in sort of fantasy setting, which was equivalent to them, notwithstanding that they kind of function like the elves of the setting because they're other and or like vampire counts or whatever, because there's like a few top lads who, if you take them out, then it all sort of like falls apart. But aesthetically, just like not like so just different. Amazing, like nothing quite else.
They've got like a weird, like sort of baroque, sort of serene humanoid vibes with weird insect parts integrated into them everywhere, and they just look so supernatural and wrong, don't they? Like it, like they. If you squint your eyes, you can see a person, but when you really look at the details, sometimes the person's face that you can see isn't even their face. Like they've got eyes on the shoulders, and it's really cool.
Mimic that.
It's exactly exactly.
Yeah,
it's exactly
some of that sort of vibe going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Good film. Anyway,
Odrune, orcs riding dinosaurs.
We joked before we started recording that they definitely need to do.
Some dinosaurs riding orcs.
That would be great.
Yeah, so tribal. They definitely had some Polynesian and African inspiration, but also they've included giant T-Rexes. Have just released a big Brontosaur, which is amazing. The model's enormous. It's not far off the size of that trophy. Actually, it's really, really quite big. And they've got a really cool sort of tempo style play to them as well, where they use like chants. Old Dominion, Byzantine, undead, Roman legionaries.
Amazingly cool. The old
Very cool,
Very
yeah. Very cool. And their centerpiece model that is the Fallen Divinity, which is essentially a shard of a mad god, which is awesome because it's like half angel, half devil, big, slender, serene-looking murder machine. Awesome.
Yeah. Like the Byzantine post-Roman Empire, but zombie.
Exactly, but yeah, zombies. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. They're still kicking about, but a bit more rotten. And then the city states, which are a sort of archaeotech, like high tech Iron Age Athenian Greeks. So hoplite, that's hoplites. That's how you pronounce it. Hoplite. These shields and spears, but then they've got like these sort of power sources integrated into them. So they've got a bit of like weird, not steampunky, but there's definitely a word for it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so they've got in particular a pretty cool unit, or am I thinking of Old Dominion? It's like a dreadnought but made out of a graveyard.
No, that's the Old Dominion. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. That's the bone golems.
Yeah.
So city states are normal human beings that have got a lot of the teachings that the Old Dominion passed on, but they left before it all went to shit and everyone went crazy and started throwing themselves on pyres and things like that.
Okay.
So they've got access to all of this very advanced technology, inscriptions that can make metals weigh less and, mechanical limbs and things like that because they've been replaced. But very sort of like high tech, but not sort of sci-fi high tech. It's more like like these sort of strange power sources and things like that. Clockwork soldiers, things like that. Really cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So and then they've got some minotaurs and they've got big giants and stuff like the Prometheans and Hephaestions. So they've got like these big Greek god looking, the curly haired beards and just great, fantastic.
So like you say, a lot of sort of recognizable tropes.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's this, but there's this other thing added every time, which, makes for, a compelling kind of world.
Yeah.
But also it's just like some super interesting miniature design and some, different painting challenges. You get into paint things which you probably haven't painted either because of the scale or because of, the combination of these different sort of like looks going on. So yeah, fantastic. So that's all for the factions so far.
Currently, yeah.
You mentioned it's set in Aya. So yeah, what's the TLDR on Aya? What's going on? Where's it like? And there's this thing called the Living World.
Yeah, so I think as a concept is really hard to explore because it's just like any fantasy game. It's super deep and super rich. And actually, Stavro, who was this guy that I was talking about, that's the creative director for the company, if you start him talking about anything to do with the game, this guy can go for hours, and it's just like so absorbing, like because he's the ideas that he's got for this world are just unbelievable, and he's such a great storyteller. So instead of me preaching the good word about Air, I would advise you go and read it, and especially through the Living World. So the Living World is a system that they've set up where you sign on to the website, free to do, you set up an account, and essentially every sort of set period of time, they release a set of short stories, and those short stories will follow either characters from factions or armies from factions or a set storyline, and you can vote on what you want the outcome of the story to be, like a direction for the story to head in, and it directly impacts the game itself, the world itself. So the world that of Air has had actual community input into its creation. So the next faction that's been released is the Sorcerer Kings, who are an Middle Eastern, Arabic, Indian, Chinese fusion of folklores and myths, and there's going to be sort of like water buffalo riders, tiger riders, big genies, and sort of almost Mongolian style step archers and all that kind of thing. So and those are the next faction to release directly as a result of the Living World, because the community chose for the Sorcerer Kings to be released next.
That's pretty cool.
So they came out with essentially 3 storylines, one of which was for the Sorcerer Kings, one of which was for Hell, Hel, and the other one was for the Dogs of War, which is a mercenary style faction which has a bit of a nautical theme. They've got a really cool model, which is a giant turtle with almost like a ship on its back. Very cool monster. But yeah, so we as a community voted, and because of the people like myself who voted for Sorcerer Kings, it's now then being released at the start of next year. And Season 8's just started, so you can now, if you want to, log on to the Parabellum website, read the short stories, and have a hand in how AI develops and how the game develops and how the story and factions develop.
I mean, it's a smart move for a number of ways. Firstly, because it's kind of compelling and just kind of cool.
Yeah.
Secondly, though, because, you're probably more likely to sell miniatures for a faction which a bunch of people are
absolutely.
involved in before it even comes out, which, just makes an awful lot of sense.
Yep, absolutely.
Just
good market research.
We should sort of probably say like hashtag not an ad at some point. Like
whilst I do have a sort of an affiliation with Parabellum in the sense that I'm a vanguard for them, so I'm a sort of a community liaison in the sense that if somebody needs to learn the game and they want to learn and they're in the Northeast, they'll find my details and I'll give them a demonstration of the game, but I'm not employed by them in any way.
Yeah.
But the sort of the praise that I'm giving the game and the sort of passion in which I talk about it is genuinely because the game is really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like that's one of the things that made me really drawn to the game.
Yeah, you've mentioned being a vanguard there. So yeah, if you want to learn Conquest from the best player in the United Kingdom, betrayedbydice@gmail.com. But like, your role as a vanguard, so how does that work? And how what do you get out of it? What do they get out of it?
Well, so as a vanguard, my responsibility is to be a community leader. And I feel like, well, I hope you would feel like that as too, but I feel like I do that pretty well in the club. I've cultivated and grown a community from literally me just turning up and begging people to play with us, to now a quite active scene where there's tables every week of Conquest being played. We've probably got 10 to 12 active players, which is awesome. But now I'm also going to be going down to Middlesbrough to do some teaching along there, and Bay Games, which is a shop our friend Kieran's opened in Whitley Bay. He's asked me to do some Conquest nights there and do some teaching there.
Great shop, by the way. If you're in the Northeast, definitely have a look at Bay Games in Whitley Bay.
Very much so. So he's got a website and you can pre-order things with him. He posts things out, so even if you're not local, small family-owned business that is run by gamers. Like Kieran and his wife are gamers and through, and they understand what it's like to be a gamer. So it really is a company worth supporting if you do buy things locally or online.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's sort of my role. I suppose what I get out of it is I get some prize support funding to do events and things like that. But also they'll put me in touch with people if I'll be contacted if people need to learn the game, and I can facilitate that for them where they might not always find me through other social media methods or whatever. So it's good. Just I kind of help them grow the game, and it means that I can have a bit of input as far as being a vanguard and be able to say, well, look, my community is experiencing this at the minute. This is the feeling that I get from my community. This might be something that needs to be looked at. And certainly as a company.
In terms of rules?
Yes, rules, yes. Yeah. So every month I fill in a newsletter, a questionnaire, and every month there are things about things that are doing, maybe performing a bit too well in the club, or the games that we're running. What do you think's the strongest list going at the moment? Is there any rules that you feel we need to tighten up the interpretation of? Things like that. Also, even things like which old sculpts would you like to see resculpted first, things like that. Maybe I'm not allowed to tell you that, I don't know, but things like that. So yeah, there's definitely I get to have a bit more of an impact or opportunity to talk to Parabellum and send some of the group opinions across. But actually, equally, if you ever have questions about the game, rules at parabellum.com, I believe, is the way that you can get through to basically the guy who writes the rules.
Yeah.
And he will answer them.
They've also got a super active Discord server.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, fair play to you. You have done like a great job of, popularizing the game sort of like at our local club. And it is great to see a game which isn't, one of the sort of like traditional big hitters being played in a way where it sort of like takes on a life of itself. People are discussing it and having ideas about the game and about different things to do with it. And like, whether it's from a painting side, a hobby side, or from like the game itself. Very cool. And yeah, it probably seems like it's like a very cool system that they're running, whereby you've got that sort of like buy-in, which then other people sort of get vicariously through you. They can contact the company through you. So it's a smart system. But talking about the game and rules and things like that, why is it great?
It's a very tight rule set. It's an alternating activation game, which I think, to me now, I would struggle to play a game that isn't alternating activations, because games where you activate a whole army in one go tend to be very swingy and can often result in feel-bad moments, because quite a lot of time you just end up losing half an army in one turn, and you think, oh great, that's me done.
Yep.
But there's quite a lot of strategy in the game as well. That was something we were chatting about prior to the podcast, is that when you play the game, you have an army that comes on to the field in waves. It doesn't come on just all at once. You don't start with everything on the board. You have light units, medium units, heavy units, and they come on in reinforcement waves. So turn 1 only lights, and then turn 2 mediums can start joining, and you kind of have to roll for your reinforcements and get this rolling reinforcement line which gives you, instead of these two giant walls walking towards each other, you get much more organic sort of flows of battle, and there's a little bit of strategy in where do you bring things on, because am I going to put all my stuff over this side and try and consolidate, or do I need to try and compete over there?
That brings a real interesting tactical thing where you can accidentally block yourself off at different times.
Happens quite often, yeah. And then you have to pre-select the order of your turn. So beginning of a phase, myself and Lee have got cards. I've got 5 units activate. He has 5 units activate. I have to choose an order in which those cards will activate, put them down in a deck, and draw one card at a time. So I'll draw a card, Lee draws a card, I draw a card, Lee draws a card. And it's a preset set of activations, which seems very limiting at first, but actually what it forces you to do is have a game plan, try and stick to it, but also try and mitigate whatever bad stuff happens to you. It really helps with sort of reflexive and reactive play, but also really promotes having a game plan. So I think one of my strongest sort of features, or was strongest features going into the LGT, is I always had a game plan that I stuck to, and then I just had to think, right, my main problem here, other than sticking to my game plan, is this. I'll deal with this, and then I'll move on to the next one. Do you know? So yeah, it's very interesting in that sense. So there's quite a lot of tactical depth to it. However, the rules themselves are keyword based, so it's not this. This unit has this rule and this unit has this rule, which are functionally the same but called different things.
Yeah.
So I like how it's nice and tight. And they're very regularly updated or monitored by the gent and the team who developed the game. So if anything ever is overperforming, you're not waiting for ages for things to get looked at, and they actively listen to their communities. So if something is complained about, or Spires did have a period of time where the healing was probably a little bit too good, and it just got toned down a little bit. But it got toned down a little bit. It's not knee-jerk reactions where the faction becomes unplayable for another 2 editions. It's, let's just take 5% off that effectiveness and see how we go. And then if we need to, we can do another 5%.
And the rules being all online.
And completely free,
Completely free and updated all the time means, or updated when necessary, means that you kind of have that thing again of, great for people who want to play it a sort of more competitive kind of way, because it's going to be more balanced. But like if I'm playing, my one game every 2 months or whatever it is, I just need to like make sure the app's up to date and the rules are up to date. I'm not bringing a book which is 3 months out of date and therefore wrong compared to the latest FAQ or whatever. It's up to date in the app, and as long as I just like have a look at it and see have a little rough idea of what's changed, if anything.
And one of the really good ththings is things that do change are changed to red in the rulebook, so you'll know if they have been changed, because quite often there's been a time where something's happened and I've been like, God, I can't remember if that got changed or not, and then you look and you get to that section straight away, you see red text and you think, I'll just reread that rule just to make sure I'm right on it.
And so when things are, so the rules are updated, I keep half an eye on it pretty regularly. How do you feel like the balance is on that? Because is it updated so much that you sort of have to like relearn it? Or?
No, not at all. So there's just been a fairly big update, which is the biggest update since version 2 came out, which was about 4 or 5 months now. And that changed the most egregious unit. So Dweg, like I said, I'll hold my hands up high and say very mean faction, and I had a very effective list with the meanest stuff in it. And they dialed some of the stuff that was in there back, and they gave one of the more underperforming armies just a little bit of extra love. But on a whole, things only change sort of very mildly, so there's not huge relearning curves. It's not like a brand new codex coming out all the time where whole factions change in one go. It might be this faction would normally hit on this unit would normally save on 5 or less, it's now 4 or less. This unit might hit on 3 or less, it's now 2 or less. That sort of thing. So as far as changes go, they're gentle, calculated, and sort of efficient without being like oh crap, so much has changed that I'm really going to have to rethink the whole thing.
And the rules being online, and and it's hard not to sort of compare to like other large
companies,
war games produced by other companies, but not being sort of shackled to like a physical book publishing schedule, and having to have sort of some sort of play test of that means that you do have the ability to sort of like keep things a bit more compressed and just to make small changes where they're needed, rather than have to change a bunch of things in reaction to something which has got some sort of like mega combo which you didn't quite realize was in there. So,
and I think we're talking about GW, and we need to be fair. We need to be fair to GW in the sense that they've got a lot of things to try and balance. It's a very large game, but they also do still make some huge mistakes, including, I don't think codexes are the way to go anymore, and I think they need to really rethink that. And the malarkey with the app recently has also been a bit strange. If you don't own the codex, you can't access the data sheets or whatever they're called, or data slates.
We need like a little segment called Good GW, Bad GW. Just in case we miss it. We can talk about this stuff.
But in the same vein, so the Conquest app, the official Conquest app, has 2 sections. Well, it's 3 sections. It's got a tournament section now, but it's got Prepare for War, but it's also got Faction Browser. So if you're ever playing against an opponent, instead of saying, what's their save, what's their whatever, very quickly you can get into a faction, look at a rule, look at statistics, and it's a very easy to use and very good app.
It works. So it used to be a web-based.
Yeah,
it used to be
exactly.
web-based, and it was fine.
Yeah.
It was a little buggy at times,
Yeah.
because depends what kind of platform you're accessing it from. But I've had no problems with the app.
That app's phenomenal.
It's spot on.
Yeah, and you can also, after you've made a list, you can create a PDF.
Yep.
And the PDF also includes at the back all of the rules for all of the upgrades that you've taken and everything without having to reference a book.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, all good stuff. So really good, fun game, very interesting dynamics, lots of interesting factions, very killy. I think things die in it very quickly as well, which I really like. So yeah, it's just a really good game, and I really encourage anyone to try it. I do.
Definitely. Favorite models?
Oh god, the best model in the line is definitely for me the Icy Otnar. It is, in fact, it's that guy up there. He is
slightly off camera.
Yeah. So this guy is, and I'll put a picture on screen. It's one of the artisan series. So they do like normal models, which are just the normal plastics and everything like that. But they've got a couple of resin special edition models. The Icy Otnar being one of them, and it is just magical. I think it's one of the best models that I've seen in any game ever. Really is just unbelievable.
All right, I'm gonna go back to the Old Dominion, and I'm gonna call them Graveyard Dreadnoughts.
Bone Golems, yeah.
Bone Golems. Alex had a unit of those that I was playing against once, and just the coolest models, big chunky things.
The Portaloos,
which are made out of smashed up graveyards, and have all sorts of weird details all over them. Yeah. Just
the reanimated statues that the Old Dominion have got are really cool as well. They've got the Canophores and the Caryatids, which are the melee and the ranged versions, and it's like these really sort of peaceful, beautiful looking Mediterranean style statues of women, like goddesses
that are gonna come at you.
Exactly, but that have been broken into several parts, and then they're joined by like some sort of ectoplasm or something like that, and they've got big braziers and like blades or giant longbows and things like that for annihilating people. But yeah, Icy Otnar is 100% my favorite. The Apex Predator for the Woodrune, amazing as well, which is the T-Rex, and the Thunder Riders have just came out there, pretty unbelievable as well. Triceratops,
very, very cool. So I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but like, where do we feel like the game's going next? You've talked a little bit about a new faction there.
Yeah, so I think
we're at 2nd edition now.
Yeah, 2.0 came out with some fairly sort of substantial changes in the way the game initially worked, but in doing so made the game play a bit faster, a little bit less counting and things, isn't it? Because we used to have to count attacks by how many models were left in the unit and things. I think you joined just before
2nd
that
edition
happened, didn't you?
Out,
yeah, and now it's just, if there's a stand there, it always contributes all its attacks, and until the stand's gone.
So part of me kind of preferred to remove single models.
Oh, did it?
But that's just a throwback to like Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
And like after like 2 games where I was like, okay, the stand, I just put a dice down and that's how many models are in it, and the stand, so a stand being like 4 regular guys or 1 monster or whatever. The stand has X number of wounds, it contributes this number of attacks. So it's interesting because you're painting a lot of models for it effectively just to be one thing.
Yeah, well,
but it looks great on the table.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that it was too restrictive in rules terms because it removes the granularity of, like Eric the toilet cleaner from the 100 Kingdoms who's had to pick up a pitchfork and fight against these giant superhuman orcs have the same amount of wounds as each other. So like 4 wounds per stand of orcs isn't right when it's, as compared to a dog's body bloke who's like a stable hand or whatever.
Yep.
So one of the reasons that they did it is because it allowed that granularity of, well, this super elite unit has 6 wounds per stand as opposed to the 4 wounds per stand of this, or 3 wounds per stand of some Spires units, which are just
Just there to
reconstructed
die.
meat
Yeah.
that's there to die. Yeah. So definitely from a rules perspective, but I do agree there's a bit of a tactile sort of like, taking them off. That's why I try to kill as many stands as possible in one go.
Yeah, got to be efficient.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do we feel like it might be going next? What's the next sort of few years looking like in the game?
So just need to obviously, my main focus now is on Sorcerer Kings. I think as long as the release schedule stays sort of as consistent as it is, and what I will say about Parabellum is the release schedule is very good. They have usually at least 1 or 2 faction releases every couple of months just to keep factions growing, but all of the rules for all of the models are available already. So even for unreleased units, the rules are there, so you can always proxy them if you want to win things. But Sorcerer Kings are really taking my attention right now. I just really want to see. I've seen a few bits and bobs, but definitely just want to see what they do with the faction. I can't wait to see the rules. I'm not a rules tester, so I'm really interested to see how the rules develop. But I think I'll be falling headlong into a Sorcerer Kings hole, without a doubt.
Again, from what you're saying, like sounds like it will just be something different to paint, like.
And that's, so I was saying in
dudes on tigers.
Exactly, yeah. So wolves, tigers, water buffaloes, elephants have got a bit of a Mumak vibe as well, like Carthaginians on the back of all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and I've sort of pseudo promised myself that this is going to be a faction that I paint to try and at least enter a competition with, because I think they'll allow so much creativity with bright, vivid colours alongside like some more normal colours that are typical for those sort of Middle Eastern and Chinese and Indian vibes.
I think something that we haven't mentioned yet as well is that as far as the miniatures go, so I have the Spires, they were one of the first that came out, and the plastics are a little bit rough and they haven't got the most detail, but the amount that they've come on with the later releases is amazing. So I think it's probably, fair to expect that the quality of the sculpts are going to continue to really sort of...
Definitely. So it's worth noting that they changed factories 6 months ago or so to, I think it's a company in Poland now. And the original production quality was, it was a very small company that was doing things with a budget in mind and things like that. And they produced very, good, like high value kits. You got a lot for your money, but agreed, some of the details were a bit sort of pudgy and smooth, weren't they, compared to your GW competitors and things like that. But if you look at, like you say, a force-grown drone or a brute drone, which are the sort of the more monster size equivalent to something like an incarnate sentinel now, it's night and day.
Massive difference.
It's night and day. And the new Dweghome stuff that's coming out compared to the old stuff, very different. The 100 Kingdoms, even, I think the 100 Kingdom stuff do stand up pretty well to the test of time. The men at arms have got a bit of a sort of smoothish face, but the knights all look great. But the new knights, the Ashen Dawn and now the Sealed Temple that are coming out of the Crimson Tower, are just unbelievable. Yeah,
fantastic. So look, that's been, it was going to happen early on in our podcasting career.
It was.
You are kind of a fan of this game.
Just a little bit, yeah.
And me too. So
I like the gush.
That's been our sort of like love letter to Conquest. But yeah, absolutely check it out. It's for all the reasons above.
Yeah,
it's a good time. Moving on. This exciting new segment that we're bringing in. So secondary objectives, where we just each look at something which maybe isn't exactly to do with tabletop gaming or might be related loosely to it, but has just been something that we've noticed or been thinking about lately. So who wants to go?
Go on, you go first.
All right. So, I've got it's a short story about me and Todd Howard.
Oh, Todd, Todd,
and hype. So like I haven't played many video games in my life, but those that I have played, I've played a fair bit of.
Yeah.
You know,
For
from,
example,
Champman 97, 98 and 0102 by miles, the two best ones, and Morrowind and Skyrim. And so, yeah, when we were talking about Skyrim in space, or like a space exploration game, yeah, I was in the queue for it. So I hadn't had a console for ages. So I got an Xbox, so I was all good to go for day one. And yeah, it's just an interesting thing about how, like, so Starfield is the game that I'm talking about. It's like, it's not bad, but it's just not
good.
It's just not amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's so bland, isn't it?
have you played much of it?
I played 5 or 6 hours.
Okay. I played a bit more than that. Like a good few hours more than that. But like, yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing, and it got me thinking about, like, you know, what I actually like about games, or like what makes for a good kind of, you know, like immersive game. Because and the word immersive is everything, because I can't watch like a loading screen of a spaceship taking off again, or a spaceship docking again, or whatever, without realizing that actually what I'm doing currently is playing a computer game. So like, it's a good computer game if you want to play a computer game, but I think, like, I want to play a computer game to actually, you know,
get lost in it,
and go for a wander in somewhere like, I don't know, Tamriel. So like, I fired up a new Skyrim load, and I'm like, who am I? I'm like a high elf mage, and like,
nice.
You know, yeah, it's so Starfield got me back into Skyrim. So an 11-year-old game, which actually, as far as it goes, I don't know if it, like, it maybe looks better than Starfield in some ways. Like, it's a better place to be. Like, more like, you know, it's more environmentally interesting.
And that's probably because there is no environments in Starfield, is it? They're just so plain.
Pretty much. And like, oh yeah, I know modders are gonna get hold of it, and they're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and then like Bethesda may or may not charge us for what like modders have done or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, just an interesting thing. So like, it's basically, what it's made me realize is that, you know, I'm glad I got the Xbox, because now I'm having a lovely time playing Skyrim again. You know, listening to Jeremy Soul's soundtrack, and just having a grand old time, just wandering around, finding some dudes that some of whom I've talked to before, occasionally somebody that I haven't, and just, you know, getting sent to do some daft thing, like clearing out a dungeon,
absolutely.
or whatever. And it is that thing of just like, Starfield, you can't just wander around in it that much.
Have you done any Baldur's Gate yet?
No, I don't have anything that'll run it. So they're bringing it to Xbox once they've sorted out the split screen thing.
Got you.
I think it might be something that comes to Series X, but not Series S immediately. And Xbox have got a big thing about, they want everything to be released on or across all platforms, so that nobody realizes one's actually not quite as good as the other, or something. But yeah, I'm well up for that at some point.
I think you would, because by all rights, it is exactly what you've just described. It's been, for me, an experience where, and I've probably only done about 15 hours in it or something like that, but like, I've went so far off the main quest line so many times, just in what's this? You know, like, I'm going to talk to this squirrel that's going to tell us about this thing, and then all of a sudden, you know, rescuing someone from that was tied to a windmill, and blah blah blah, and it's pretty magical, like, and I think Forgotten Realms games tend to be pretty good. Like, all of the Baldur's Gates have been really good. All of the Icewind Dales and Planescape Torment, all that kind of stuff, are all really, really good. But they've really, really hit the nail on the head with Baldur's Gate 3. I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I've not heard anybody say anything other than that. This is amazing.
Yeah,
and also, like, you know, a great way to play D&D without having to, like, you know, roll any dice or keep maths, or
people.
Exactly. So yeah, that's it for me. What is your other thing for this episode?
I would really like to try and print and paint a 3D print a bust, and try and paint a bust. So one of our club members, Drew, is a Sergio Calvo fanatic, and ended up going over to one of his boot camps over in Madrid, and posted a phenomenal picture of what he came out with. And Drew's an amazing painter and sculptor and things anyways, but painted this sort of not bust but large scale miniature 75mm miniature. And I just thought I would love to paint something that like is just to paint, not to put on a game table, doesn't have to tie in with anything else. It's just me and that model and just see what I can do, because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
And just to see how it goes. So yeah, I'm going to give that a try.
Amazing.
Got a cool, I'll put a picture of that up as well. A cool bust of like a cyberpunk-y style android woman to print off, and once it's done, I'll give it a shot.
I really like the idea of painting some eyes where it doesn't involve just holding your breath
and having a stroke
and just trying to do it, like get it roughly in the right area.
Absolutely.
And like in skin tones, it's I guess like obviously it's a sort of a whole different game, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not going to use a airbrush either. I'm going to do all brush. So yeah,
brilliant. All right, well that'll just about do it, I reckon.
I think so.
Episode 2 in the can.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening. As we've said, you can contact us at betrayedbydice@gmail.com. We're thinking the next episode might be with you in about a month's time. A little bit shorter turnaround than between the last one and this. And yeah, next topic that we're thinking of is talking about all our favourite and also maybe some of our less favourite hobby gear. So all the gear, some idea. Paints, brushes, random household bits and bobs, everything that we use. And I don't know, some of the stuff that we use and really rate. It would be, I think, helpful or maybe interesting to talk about. I don't know, where we agree and disagree on like different paints, different...
or some of the stuff that we've bought thinking it was going to be the bee's knees.
Didn't quite work out.
I'm a sucker of a YouTube trend just as much as anyone else, and I've bought plenty of things where I've thought, oh god,
there's a few Kickstarters that you can get roped into, isn't there?
Yeah.
But yeah, look forward to that. In the meantime, again, thanks so much for listening.
Thanks everyone,
and we'll see you next time.